Stumbling upon Arya's secret life online was like a bolt of lightning, sudden and devastating. Our home, once a sanctuary of love, became a stage for her double life. "It's just a job," she'd say, her words slicing through to the trust we built. The lies, the videos, the unbearable truth, all unfolding before my disbelieving eyes. From love to betrayal, watch how I navigated this storm. This is my story. Enjoy watching it.
Reflecting on the past 2 decades, I'm amazed by the incredible journey that Arya and I have embarked on. Our 20 years of marriage have been filled with countless memories and a bond that I once believed was unbreakable. When we first met, it was clear that we were complete opposites. I was the calm and steady type, finding contentment in quiet evenings at home or working on projects in the garage. Arya, on the other hand, was a wild child, always seeking non-stop fun and adventure. She was the life of the party, constantly pushing me out of my comfort zone and into social gatherings. Despite our contrasting personalities, there was an undeniable attraction between us. They say opposites attract, and in our case, it certainly held true. I was drawn to Arya's vibrant energy, her infectious laughter, and her ability to make even the simplest moments feel exhilarating. She brought a burst of color into my world, introducing a spontaneity that I never knew I needed. Our backgrounds were also vastly different. I grew up in a close-knit community where everyone knew each other, while Arya came from a bustling city where anonymity was the norm and life moved at a fast pace. However, we managed to find common ground and build a strong foundation. Our shared love for adventure, our eagerness to explore new things, and our commitment to creating a life together brought us closer. In the early years of our marriage, we were inseparable, facing challenges as a united front and celebrating every milestone along the way. Looking back, I now realize that our differences were what made us resilient. We complemented each other, each bringing unique perspectives and strengths to our relationship. I provided stability and a level-headed approach, while Arya brought excitement and a zest for life. Together, we created a beautiful harmony. As time went on, I couldn't help but notice Arya's party animal nature becoming more pronounced. What began as occasional outings with friends gradually transformed into regular late-night adventures and extended weekend parties. I would often find myself waiting anxiously for her return, becoming increasingly concerned as the hours passed. Arya's tendency to excessively indulge in alcohol became a recurring pattern, evident in her stumbling entrance through the door, reeking of liquor and cigarette smoke. Her speech slurred and her eyes glazed over. I made an effort to understand her situation, recognizing that the demands of her corporate job were taking a toll on her mental well-being. The long working hours, constant pressure to meet deadlines, and the cutthroat nature of her industry all contributed to her heightened stress levels. I distinctly remember a particularly challenging period when Arya was engrossed in a high-stakes project. She would arrive home late every night, barely acknowledging my presence before collapsing into bed. On weekends, she would either be engrossed in her laptop, typing away furiously, or she would be out with her colleagues, engaging in activities that left me feeling uneasy. I attempted to address my concerns with her, expressing worry about her excessive drinking and the impact it was having on our relationship. However, Arya would always dismiss my concerns, insisting that it was her way of coping with the stress. She reassured me that it was only temporary, and once the project was completed, things would return to normal. Yet as one project ended, another would take its place. The cycle continued, and my frustration grew. I longed for the Arya I had fallen in love with, the one who was present and fully engaged, the one who prioritized our time together. Now it felt as though I was competing for her attention with her job and her partying. I tried to be supportive, to be the pillar of strength she needed during those challenging times. I would prepare her favorite meals, run her baths, and lend a listening ear whenever she needed to vent. However, the tension between us was palpable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were drifting apart. The late nights became more frequent, and Arya's absences grew longer. I found myself sitting alone in our living room, the clock ticking past midnight, then 1 a.m., then 2 a.m. The worry ate away at me as I tried to convince myself that she was simply spending time with colleagues, unwinding after a long day at work. However, the excuses began to accumulate. "I had to work late on a project," she would say, stumbling through the door at 3 a.m. "We had a team bonding event that ran longer than expected." Her words felt empty, and the uncertainty grew like a weed in my mind. I couldn't help but notice the changes in her behavior. She became more secretive with her phone, always keeping it face down or hastily locking the screen when I entered the room. She started taking calls in hushed tones, slipping out of the room to have conversations that I was not privy to. The worst thoughts invaded my mind. Was she using drugs? Had the stress of her job driven her to seek solace in something more dangerous than alcohol? The mere thought of it made me feel nauseous. One night I reached my breaking point. As she walked through the door, the clock reading 4 a.m., I confronted her. "Aria, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. "I'm concerned about you, the late nights, the secrecy. Are you using drugs?" Her reaction caught me off guard. Instead of the denial or defensiveness I anticipated, she burst into tears. "How could you even think that?" she sobbed, mascara streaming down her cheeks. "Do you have any idea how much stress I'm under at work? I'm barely holding it together, and now you're accusing me of being a drug addict?" Guilt washed over me. Had I jumped to conclusions? Was I being unfair? I tried to backtrack to apologize for my accusation. "I'm sorry, Aria. I'm just worried about you. You're hardly ever home anymore, and when you are, it feels like you're not really present." She wiped away her tears, her expression hardening. "I'm doing everything I can to support this family, to provide us with the life we deserve. And this is the gratitude I receive. Accusations and mistrust. Even as we stood face to face in our living room, I could sense the growing distance between us. The weight of silence hung heavily in the air, filled with unspoken words and unresolved issues that threatened to suffocate both of us. Sitting at my computer, a mix of shame and frustration washed over me as I navigated to a website of explicit content. It had been weeks since Aria and I had shared any intimacy, and the absence of physical connection was taking its toll on me. I struggled to recall the last time we had even shared a passionate kiss, let alone anything more. As I scrolled through the videos, one thumbnail caught my attention. The woman in the image bore an uncanny resemblance to Aria. My heart raced as I clicked on the video, desperately hoping it was merely a coincidence. However, as the scene unfolded, my worst fears were confirmed. There on the screen was my wife. Her face was unmistakable, even beneath the heavy makeup and provocative attire. My stomach churned, and a sense of sickness overwhelmed me. I struggled to comprehend what I was witnessing. How could Aria, the woman I had built a life with, be starring in adult films? Had our entire marriage been a facade? The realization hit me like a tidal wave, and I felt a mix of anger, hurt, and disbelief. With trembling hands, I clicked on the channel that hosted the video. My heart sank as I discovered numerous similar videos, each featuring Aria in compromising positions and various states of undress. The explicit titles left no room for doubt regarding the nature of the content. Tears welled up in my eyes as I scrolled through the painful reminders of the betrayal I was witnessing. The woman I had loved, the mother of my children, had been leading a double life, and I had been oblivious to it all. Countless questions swirled in my mind. How long had this been going on? Was this the reason behind her secretive behavior and late nights? Had she ever truly loved me? Or was our entire relationship a sham, a surge of anger mingled with the hurt and disbelief that consumed me? I can't believe she would do this to me, to our family. How could someone deceive their own spouse like this, day after day, while involved in such a disgraceful profession? I closed the browser, unable to bear the sight of Aria's face on the screen any longer. My heart felt shattered into countless pieces. The trust I had placed in my wife was now just a bitter memory. I sat in the darkness of our home office, weighed down by Aria's betrayal. I didn't know what to do or where to turn. All I knew was that the woman I loved, the life I had built, was nothing but an illusion, and I had no clue how to move forward. Taking a deep breath, I tried to calm my nerves as I heard Aria's car pull into the driveway. The sound of her heels clicking on the hardwood floor reverberated through the house. each step a reminder of the impending confrontation. She entered the living room, a smile on her face that quickly faded when she saw my expression. "Miles? What's wrong?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. I stood up, my hands tightly clenched at my sides. "We need to talk, Arya." She placed her purse down, her brow furrowed. "All right, what's happening?" I pulled out my phone, the screen displaying one of the many videos I had discovered. "Care to explain this?" Arya's face turned pale as she stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. Her eyes darted around the room, avoiding direct contact with me. I scoffed, shaking my head. "Don't lie to me, Arya. I know everything." She took a step back, her hands raised in defense. "Miles, it's not what you think. It's for work, a promotional project. It's not real." My anger surged, my voice growing louder with each word. "Stop lying to me. I saw the videos, Arya. I saw the titles. I saw you, my wife, engaging in acts that no married woman should ever partake in." Arya's eyes welled up with tears, her bottom lip trembling. "Miles, please let me explain." "What do you mean?" I exclaimed, raising my hands in frustration. "How have you been deceiving me? Day after day while you go off and do this? Explain how you could betray me, betray our family like this." She slumped onto the couch, her head in her hands. "I'm sorry, Miles. I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to find out like this." I paced the room, my thoughts racing. "For how long, Arya? How long has this been happening?" She sniffled, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "A few months. It started as a one-time thing, but then they offered me more money and we needed the cash, Miles. We have bills to pay, kids to support." I shook my head in disbelief. "So you thought the solution was to what? To become a porn star, to sell your body for money?" Arya looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "It wasn't like that, Miles. It was just a job. It didn't mean anything." I felt my heart breaking all over again, the pain of her betrayal weighing heavily on me. "It meant something to me, Arya. It meant everything to me. You were supposed to be my wife, my partner, and now I don't even know who you are anymore." She reached out for me, her hand trembling. "Miles, please, I love you. I never wanted to hurt you. Can't we talk about this?" I pulled away from her touch, my gaze stern. "Talk about what, Arya? How you've been lying to me for months? How you've been giving yourself to other men while I sit at home like a fool waiting for you?" Arya sobbed, her shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry, Miles. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." I tried to maintain my composure as I dialed Sheila's number, my fingers trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. The phone rang once, twice before she answered, her voice cheery and unaware of the turmoil within me. "Hey, Miles, what's up?" I cleared my throat, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sheila, I need to talk to you about Arya. It's important." Sheila's response was met with a momentary silence, followed by a hesitant inquiry. "All right, what is happening?" I took a deep breath, and the words rushed out of me in a torrent. I discovered everything about her, her other job, the videos, the websites. I know it all. Sheila fell into silence, and for a brief moment I questioned if she had abruptly ended the call. However, she eventually spoke, her voice soft and filled with remorse. "Oh, Miles, I am deeply sorry that you had to find out this way." My chest tightened, and my grip on the phone caused my knuckles to turn white. "So you were aware? You knew what she was doing?" Sheila let out a sigh, the weight of resignation evident in her tone. "Yes, I knew. Bianca introduced her to the industry a few months ago. Arya. She was incredibly enthusiastic about it, Miles. She kept talking about how enjoyable and liberating it felt." I shook my head, struggling to comprehend the notion of my wife finding liberation in selling her body on camera. "But why, Sheila? We are not in financial distress. We have a good life, a comfortable home. Why would she choose to do this?" "I do not know, Miles. I believe she simply desired something new, something thrilling. You know how Arya is, always searching for the next adventure." I closed my eyes, the image of my wife's smiling face flashing before me, the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had vowed to love and cherish for the rest of my days. How could she do this to me, to our family? "Did you attempt to dissuade her, Sheila? Did you convey to her the wrongness of her actions? Another pause followed, accompanied by a heavy sigh. I did, Miles. I informed her that it was a terrible idea, that it could ruin her life. However, you know, Arya, once she sets her mind on something, nothing can deter her. My anger surged once more, the betrayal cutting deep into my soul. She should have considered that before she decided to sacrifice our marriage for a few fleeting thrills. Sheila's voice was gentle, almost pitying. I am so sorry, Miles. I cannot fathom the emotions you must be experiencing right now. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat making it arduous to speak. I feel like I don't even know her anymore, Sheila. The woman I married, the woman I loved, she's gone. I disconnected the call, my thoughts swirling from Sheila's disclosures. The idea of Arya involving our son Finn in her scandalous activities ignited a fresh surge of anger within me. How could she even contemplate exposing our child to such depravity? I paced the living room, my hands clenched into fists. I needed to take action to make Arya realize her mistakes. However, confronting her directly seemed futile, given her deep denial. Suddenly, a plan formed in my mind. I could write an article, an exposé of sorts, revealing Arya's double life. I could anonymously publish it, unveiling the truth about the woman who was once my wife. Perhaps then, faced with the harsh reality of her actions, she would be compelled to confess. I sat at my computer, my fingers swiftly typing away on the keyboard as the words flowed out of me. I detailed the videos, the websites, the lies and deceit that had torn apart our marriage. I expressed the pain and betrayal I experienced, the overwhelming sense of loss whenever I looked at Arya. While writing, I felt a sense of relief washing over me, as if I were purging the poison that had been festering inside me for so long. I knew that publishing the article carried risks, that it could have numerous repercussions. Nevertheless, I was prepared to take that risk, to do whatever was necessary to protect my family from the chaos Arya had caused. I clicked publish, my heart racing as I witnessed the article going live. The truth was now out there, for better or for worse. All I could do was wait to see how Arya would respond and hope that somehow we could find a way to heal from the damage she had inflicted. As I sank back into my chair, drained from the emotional turmoil of the past few hours, my phone buzzed with a new text message. Glancing at the screen, my heart sank upon seeing Arya's name flashing across it. The message I received was clear. We need to talk. It was a moment I had been dreading, and now it had finally arrived. As I heard the front door open, signaling Arya's return home, I braced myself for what was to come. My heart raced and my palms grew sweaty as I tightly held onto the printed article. This was the moment of truth. Arya breezed into the living room, her face flushed and her eyes shining. "Hey, babe," she chirped, casually tossing her purse onto the couch. I extended the article towards her, my hand trembling slightly. "We need to talk," I said, my voice filled with seriousness. Arya's brow furrowed as she took the paper from me, her eyes scanning the headline. "What is this?" she asked, her tone defensive. "It's an article I wrote," I replied, my gaze locked onto hers. "It's about you, about your actions." Arya's eyes widened and she let out a forced laugh. "What are you talking about, Miles? This is absurd." I shook my head, a smile devoid of joy forming on my lips. "Is it? Because Finn seems to think otherwise." Arya's face turned pale, and she took a step back in shock. "What? What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, preparing myself for the words I was about to utter. "Finn told me everything, Arya. He told me how you approached him, trying to involve him in your business." Arya's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked like a fish out of water, desperately gasping for air. "How could you, Arya?" I asked, my voice breaking. "How could you even consider dragging our son into something like this?" Tears welled up in Arya's eyes, and she reached out a trembling hand towards me. "Miles, please, let me explain," she pleaded, but I pulled away, shaking my head. "No, Arya, there's no explanation for this. You've shattered our family, our trust. I don't even recognize who you are anymore." Arya's shoulders slumped, and she buried her face in her hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice muffled. "I'm so sorry." I let out a heavy sigh, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. Sorry isn't enough. As I reflect on the situation, it becomes clear that underestimating Arya's tenacity was a grave mistake. Her stubbornness and self-centered nature made it impossible for her to accept defeat gracefully. The legal battle dragged on for months, with Arya's unwavering determination to drain me of every resource. She spared no expense in assembling a team of formidable lawyers, undoubtedly funded by the ill-gotten gains from her unsavory activities. They fought relentlessly, tooth and nail, to protect every penny and asset we had accumulated throughout the years. However, I possessed a trump card of my own. The evidence I had meticulously gathered against Arya painted a damning portrait of her deceitful double life. Videos, recordings, and witness statements all laid bare the truth, leaving no room for doubt. When Arya attempted to sue me for defamation, I couldn't help but stifle a laugh. How could she possibly believe she had a leg to stand on? The truth was unequivocally on my side, and the court saw through her feeble accusations. The judge swiftly dismissed her case with a dismissive wave of his hand. As the judge's gaze narrowed in disgust upon Arya, she stood there, her face flushed with a mixture of anger and humiliation. Her clenched fists betrayed her frustration. A sense of grim satisfaction washed over me as I witnessed her squirming. She had brought this upon herself with her lies and betrayal, shattering our family and our future. Now she was paying the price. Yet, amidst my triumph, a tinge of sadness lingered within me. This was not the life I had envisioned for myself. I had imagined growing old with Arya, watching our children flourish and establish their own families. Instead, I found myself picking up the shattered fragments of our marriage, attempting to rebuild my life from the ruins. Although the road ahead would undoubtedly be arduous, I was resolute in my determination to emerge stronger on the other side. As I exited the courthouse, clutching the divorce papers in my hand, I inhaled a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. The world felt different now, as if a burden had been lifted from my weary shoulders. I was finally free, liberated from Arya's web of lies and manipulation. Now I could embark on a fresh start. I was astonished by the depths to which Arya was willing to go during our divorce proceedings. It felt as though I was witnessing an entirely different side of her, one that was vindictive and manipulative, qualities I had never seen in her before. She went to great lengths to discredit me, portraying me as the villain in our failed marriage. She even had the audacity to accuse me of being abusive, alleging that I had threatened her and our children. Her claims were nothing but blatant lies, and I could only shake my head in disbelief as she weaved her web of deceit. However, Arya underestimated the power of the truth. She believed she could hide behind her lawyers and falsehoods, but the evidence I had gathered was undeniable. Finn's testimony was particularly damning, as he vividly recounted the numerous occasions he had witnessed Arya with other men, the extravagant gifts she had received, and the lavish lifestyle she had led behind my back. As Finn spoke, I observed Arya's reactions closely. She tried to maintain a composed facade, but I could see cracks beginning to appear. Her jaw clenched, her eyes darted nervously around the courtroom, and a sheen of sweat formed on her brow. The paper trail of Arya's illicit activities was equally incriminating. Bank statements, credit card receipts, and hotel records all pointed to a life of excess and indulgence funded by the money she had earned through her illicit affairs. It was disheartening to witness the extent of her betrayal laid out so plainly. Throughout it all, I remained calm and collected, allowing the facts to speak for themselves without resorting to Arya's level of petty accusations. I had faith that the truth would ultimately prevail, and I was willing to let the legal system take its course. As Finn took the stand, I felt a surge of pride and gratitude for my son. He had grown into a remarkable young man with a strong moral compass. I knew it must have been difficult for him to testify against his own mother, yet he did so with a quiet dignity that surpassed his years. Finn recounted his experience with his mother's adult film business, his voice unwavering despite the gravity of his words. He revealed that his mother had attempted to involve him in recruiting young individuals to exploit, just as she had been exploited. Arya's face turned pale, her eyes filled with shock and fear. She had not anticipated her own son turning against her so completely. Finn's gaze remained fixed on the judge as he continued, stating that his mother had promised him easy money by preying on people's dreams and desires. However, Finn knew deep down that this was morally wrong. He refused to be a part of something so repugnant and destructive. As Finn spoke, a surge of emotion washed over me. I had tried my best to shield him from the worst of Arya's actions, to protect him from the harsh realities of her double life. Yet, he had seen through her lies and manipulations, just as I had. With a determined expression, Finn declared his allegiance to his father. He praised his father's integrity and honor, emphasizing that he did not deserve to be dragged through the mud by someone who prioritized money and fame over her own family. Arya's lawyer attempted to undermine Finn's testimony and credibility through cross-examination. However, my son remained steadfast, refusing to be swayed or intimidated. He spoke the truth plainly and honestly, shattering any remaining illusions about his mother's character. As Finn stepped down from the witness stand, I made sure to acknowledge him with a nod. I understood the significance of his support and the immense strength and courage it took for him to stand up to Arya. In that moment, a renewed sense of hope for the future washed over me. I believed that I could endure the storm and emerge stronger on the other side. As the divorce proceedings continued, Arya's behavior became increasingly erratic and desperate. She seemed willing to do or say anything to gain an advantage in the court battle, grasping at straws. I observed with disbelief as she stood in front of the judge, her face twisted with anger and malice. "I deserve more than half of our assets," she snarled, her eyes filled with hatred. "I have built this life, this family. He would be nothing without me." Her lawyer attempted to calm her down, but Arya was beyond reason. She continued to rant and rave, making unfounded accusations and wild claims. She even went as far as suggesting that I had coerced her into entering the adult film industry, that I had somehow forced her to betray our marriage vows. I shook my head in disgust, unable to comprehend the extent of her delusion. How could she possibly believe that I would ever support such a thing, that I would ever want my wife to degrade herself for money and fame? As Arya's tirade persisted, the judge's patience began to wear thin. He slammed his gavel, attempting to restore order in the courtroom, but Arya remained undeterred. Her voice grew shrill as she hurled insults and accusations at me from across the room. "You never supported me!" she screamed, her face contorted with fury. "You never understood my dreams, my desires. You held me back, trapping me in this monotonous, uneventful life. I had to find my own path. I had to make my own way." I sat in stunned silence, unable to fathom what I was hearing. This was the woman I had loved, the mother of my children, and yet she now seemed like a stranger to me, a distorted version of the person I once knew. As Arya's outburst finally subsided, the judge turned to her with a stern expression. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, his voice filled with disapproval, "your behavior in this courtroom has been utterly disgraceful. You have shown a complete lack of respect for these proceedings and for your own family." Arya's face dropped, her confidence crumbling under the weight of the judge's words. She appeared to shrink, her shoulders slumping as the reality of her situation began to sink in. I found myself actively avoiding any reminders of Arya's scandalous past. The mere thought of witnessing her face and body engaged in those degrading acts caused a sickening feeling in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't bear to confront the visual proof of her betrayal, to witness the woman I once deeply loved reduced to a mere object of lust and depravity. Even as the divorce proceedings continued, I adamantly refused to visit the adult video website where her videos were hosted. My lawyer had advised me to gather evidence to strengthen our case against her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The very idea of witnessing Arya's downfall, of seeing her sell herself for the cameras, was too overwhelming for me to handle. There was a time when I wasn't so averse to the world of adult entertainment. In the early years of our relationship, Arya and I had occasionally explored our sexuality through erotic films and magazines. It had been a playful and intimate part of our connection, a way to add excitement to our bedroom. But this situation was different. This wasn't some harmless fantasy or role play. This was my wife, the mother of my children, willingly exposing her body and soul for the world to see. She had taken something sacred and precious and twisted it into a cheap and vulgar spectacle. I couldn't help but wonder how long she had been leading this double life, how many lies she had told to conceal her secret career. The thought of her sneaking off to film scenes, engaging in all sorts of depraved acts with strangers, filled me with a mixture of anger and disgust. Yet even in the midst of my anger, I couldn't completely erase the memories of the woman I had once adored. The way she laughed, the way she smiled, the way she looked at me with those radiant eyes. Those memories were now tainted, forever marked by the knowledge of her betrayal. As the divorce dragged on, I focused on the future, on creating a new life for myself and my children. I immersed myself in my work, in my role as a father, determined to provide stability and security in the aftermath of Arya's selfish actions. As I attempted to move forward, the persistent worry for my son Finn lingered. Being a teenager, he was still trying to comprehend the world and his role in it. Now, he had to face the aftermath of his mother's betrayal, dealing with both public shame and private agony. In the ensuing weeks and months, I observed him closely, searching for any signs of distress or resentment. He became more reserved, spending extended periods secluded in his room. Despite my efforts to reach out and provide support, he distanced himself, retreating into his own thoughts. I understood that he needed time to process his feelings, to accept that the woman he once admired had fallen from grace. However, I also recognized that he couldn't handle it alone. He required guidance, encouragement, a sympathetic ear, and a steady presence to navigate the turbulent waters of adolescence and family turmoil. Therefore, I endeavored to be there for him, establishing a secure and nurturing environment for his healing and development. I urged him to seek therapy, to discover constructive ways to channel his emotions. I ensured he understood that my love for him was unwavering, unaffected by any circumstances. As for Arya, I vowed to sever all ties with her. She had made her decisions and must face the repercussions. I harbored no intention of maintaining any relationship with her, not even for the sake of our children. I acknowledged that the wounds from this ordeal would never completely heal, that the hurt and betrayal would always linger. Nevertheless, I was resolute in forging a new path for myself, one grounded in truth, honor, and self-worth. I vowed never to be deceived by appearances or charisma again, never to place my trust in someone capable of such betrayal. I vowed never to lower my guard, never to expose myself to the heartache inflicted by Arya. Instead, my main priority would be to strive towards becoming the best father I possibly could, ensuring the well-being of my family and establishing a secure and affectionate household. I would seek out individuals who align with my principles, those whom I can rely on during challenging times. Perhaps, if fate allows, I might discover a means to embrace love once more, to unlock my heart for someone who genuinely merits it. However, at present, my utmost focus would be on the process of healing, both for my own sake and for the sake of my son. All other matters could be postponed for the time being. Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.